Now we're going to look at some of the critical success factors. In order to avoid delays, you should have the appropriate skilled staff as members of the workshop and participate for the entire project duration. Your documentation needs to be ready at the project initiation, and you need to make sure your decision makers are involved at all steps so they can make decisions quickly. When you have the selection of hardware, often it requires a preparation for the specifications for distribution based on the vendor's criteria. The specifications that you have should include things like organizational descriptions, such as if it's centralized or decentralized, distributed, if we're going to outsource, if we have manned types of computer facilities. We need to have knowledge of the information processing requirements. And you obviously need to know the hardware requirements. We should also know the system software applications that are going to be on there, especially the operating system. We need to talk about support requirements such as training, adaptability requirements such as whether or not this is compatible with any existing hardware or software platforms, constraints on staffing level, and also conversion requirements such as testing time for the hardware and software. When you're purchasing the hardware and software from a vendor, you should consider things like testimonials of other users, any provisions you had for competitive bidding, comparing bids against the evaluation criteria, right, making sure they match, that you meet your goals, the financial health of the vendor. Yeah, basically, we want them to still be there to give us support. Comparison of delivery schedules against requirements. And that's a big thing because I've worked with some very large vendors as I work with service providers. And, some vendors have equipment that they just cannot get enough built to be able to distribute. So sometimes, projects get pushed and pushed and pushed because they're waiting for delivery. You want to look at that. Analysis of security control facilities, of course, and evaluating the performance against what your requirements were. And that's a big deal because I'm hoping you didn't buy the equipment or are going to buy the equipment if it didn't meet those requirements that you had to have. When you're evaluating the vendor's proposal, there are going to be some criteria that you should look at during the evaluation process. Of course, turnaround time, which is the time it's going to take for help desk of the vendor to be able to fix a problem. Response time is a measurement of how long it takes a system to respond to a specific query. System reaction time, which is often thought of as the time taken to be able to log into the system or connect to a network. We want to know about its throughput capability, the amount of workload that it has, its compatibility with other hardware and software, its capacity, which by the way is different than throughput. Often capacity might be how many simultaneous requests it can receive, whereas throughput is just that, about information going in and coming out. And utilization, which is a comparison of the uptime to the downtime. On the system software acquisition, it's management's responsibility to be aware of the hardware and software capabilities, since those options and those capabilities can improve business processes and provide expansion, perhaps, for the business and for the customers. It's suggested that the managers stay up to date on the latest versions or releases. If changes and updates are not made, you might see a reduction in service or even disruption of services. When we look at the implementation of that system software, that should involve testing, especially in the testing of the software in a lab environment. You want to get some sort of certification and accreditation prior to your approving the push of the software into that production network. Obviously, change control is important in all facets of IT, but without proper change control, you could have unauthorized changes being made, and that could disrupt processing. Your IS management and personnel should be aware of and involved in the change process. And again, right, this could be change that you're doing in the lab, or we could be talking about change after you push it out in production. But at any process, we should have that well documented and hopefully a good process in place.